Tasya vachakaha pranavaha. The transcendental sound personifying him is Om. In his commentary, Vyasa says that there is an inherent relationship between Ishvara and Om, which is eternal, and it is not dependent upon social usage, unlike conventional names. For instance, or as an example, if we refer to a particular animal, cow, and people in the English-speaking world all agree that this is the name that we will use that represents this particular animal, this is a social convention. It's dependent upon social usage. And so the point that Vyasa in his commentary is making is that the connection between Ishvara and Om is not something that is created by man or created by any person or people within the material world, and that this connection is actually eternal. So he uses the example of the relationship between a lamp and the light which emanates from a lamp. Wherever the lamp is, and of course it's understood that it is a burning lamp, there must always and necessarily be light. And in a similar manner, wherever Om is vibrated, Ishvara is there, and wherever there is Ishvara, Om is also there. So this is the nature of the relationship between Ishvara and Om. So Ishvara, he states, Vyasa in his explanation, has been known by the syllable Om. He was known in previous creations as well as for all eternity. So this is an eternal designation, and just stressing once again, it's not something assigned by human beings. This is quite a deep subject, dealing with what's called spiritual or transcendental sound. So if we recall from the previous verse commentary, Vyasa has stated that just as Ishvara existed as a perfect being at the beginning of this creation, so he was also the same in previous creations. And this explains this, why Om is then treated in the same way. The Vedas refer to spiritual or transcendental sound as Sabda Brahma. Spiritual sound or transcendental sound is not anything like or connected to mundane or prakritic sound of the material world or the material energy. So just as Ishvara is not subject to time or any material laws, similarly, those spiritual sounds that I'm speaking of, Om being an example, these spiritual sounds which designate or name Ishvara are also considered non-different from him. And we'll explain about that a little more in a moment. Or maybe continuing with that idea, spiritual sound was considered vastly different than material sound, in that it contained a spiritual potency. As an example, if I say the name or use the syllables that state the name of a mango, that name may refer to or something that we can sort of recollect in our mind in terms of shape, a taste, a flavor, an experience of eating. The sound of the name and the actual fruit that it represents are entirely different. I could, for instance, try to chant mango, 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 mango all day, and I will not actually experience the reality of the mango. This is Sabda Brahma, or the transcendental sound, referencing the names of Ishvara, are completely different in nature, in that Ishvara is actually present within that sound, along with all possible spiritual experience. And so for this reason, there were categories of transcendentalists who speak of these transcendental sounds in a deeply personal way, speaking of them and addressing them as spiritual personality. We can begin to appreciate this to some degree, perhaps, like for instance in the Bhagavad Gita. There are 3 verses that I can think of right now where Sri Krishna states that he is this syllable Om. It's not that it just represents him or indicates him. It actually is non-different from him. This would be in chapter 7 in the 8th verse or shloka, and then again in the 9th chapter, the 17th shloka, and also in the 10th chapter, in the 25th shloka, Krishna makes this quite emphatic statement. And we also have another reference in the Bhagavad Gita that the letters that make up this pranava are to be considered the supreme combination of letters above all else. In the Upanishads, there are also numerous references to this syllable Om. One of the Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad, deals in great length with the divine syllable Om. But we also have a reference in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, which states that through the practice of meditating upon Om, this pranava, one can see, and they use the term literally see, pasyet, one can see God or Devam. And this is in the first section, in the 14th shloka in the Svetasvatara Upanishad. So this, begins to offer somewhat of a revelation to the sincere and very humble practitioner, that it is going to be possible to actually come to encounter Ishvara through this transcendental sound, Om. We also have another verse in the Padma Purana which elucidates in a quite amazing way and with significantly more depth on this supreme combination of letters, or this transcendental vibration, Om. And it states that in relation to this mantra, Om, that the first letter, A, it signifies Lord Vishnu, who is been designated as Ishvara. Then it says that the letter U, the second letter, it signifies goddess Lakshmi, or Shri, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of Vishnu. And then the final letter, refers to their servant, meaning the Jiva, the living being, who is the 25th element. So as we've previously mentioned, in the Sankhya philosophy, or that was propounded by Kapila Deva, that Prakriti is made up of 24 elements. Then the 25th element was considered to be the Jiva, the Atma, or Atman, or Purusha. And the 26th element was considered Ishvara, or the Param Purusha. And so the Vedas are filled with wonderful descriptions of the glories of this supreme combination of letters, this syllable Om. And it is not possible for me to adequately glorify or speak about its great spiritual importance as being not just a representation of, but actually a way in which one can directly come into contact with Ishvara through the recitation of this syllable Om, which will be taken up by Patanjali in the next sutra. Thank you.